This is a story about Burt. Hello, Burt! Now, Burt may look a little strange. He's sort of black and yellow, but get to know him a little bit and you'll find out he's a really nice fellow. Burt's a little bit different from you and me. Our friend Burt is a bumblebee. He had a bumblebee father and a bumblebee mother, a bumblebee sister and a bumblebee brother, and he worked at the local cinema as a bumblebee usher. Yes, you're right. Burt did have it good. The only trouble was Burt didn't think how people thought he should. Now, whereas you and me are free to do whatever it is we please, Burt's work, home and family lived in little more than a honey factory, which means he was expected to serve as a loyal worker on the honey reserves, meaning Burt would have to be the thing he least wanted to be. Yes. They expected him to be a worker bee. Aww. Now, it wasn't that he didn't love to fly among the flowers or frolic in the pollen during the April showers, it was just that he couldn't bear to spend his life in a field so terribly specialised. Because, well, Burt loved to sing. He loved to write. He loved to fly his kite beneath the pale moonlight. It wasn't that he wanted to be different or disobey, it just so happened that Burt loved the ballet. But there was one thing, something he never loved anything as much as. Burt loved hearing music. But especially, he loved jazz. Yes, jazz. Now, I don't know if you know much about bumblebee biology, but Burt had learned a little from the Institute of Hive Zoology. Among the most hideous qualities of the human being are these 7 holes in the head, 2 of which are for seeing, 3 of which are for breathing, but 1's for eating too. But the final 2 are hideous growths that human beings hear through. Which left Burt confused. The recording had said that Burt didn't have ears on his head, which implied that he couldn't hear, but he had felt something funny a few days ago, something that had made him draw near. He'd been out collecting honey, you see. For even as a boy he'd been a busy bee, and drawing close to a house on the hill he felt a vibration that was loud and shrill, but plateaued into a note that he was sure he could hear. It made his insides churn and his head feel rather queer. A saxophone. He stopped and listened, and all the other bees saw his eyes shone and glistened, and he stood transfixed, trying to understand, but failed to grasp any words. If bees could look upwards, to search the heavens for meaning, I think he would have done. Perhaps you've felt this fleeting feeling, and you can understand why it sent him reeling. It's not something I feel very often anymore. It makes you scratch your chin and think until your head is sore. It's a little spark that sets off a fire. Burt rushed home. He told everyone he knew about what he'd seen and what he'd heard and where he'd been, the vibrations in his head and what they'd been made by and how everything was changing and how, because our little friend Burt was a new bee now, but although we were all rather perplexed. They didn't understand it. They thought it might be a practical joke with Burt being the one who'd planned it.
A musical bee? You must be deluded. What you're saying is ridiculous. It's silly and stupid,
was their response, much to Burt's dismay. But worst of all, and worse than that, was what his parents said. They thought that he'd gone mad inside his little insect head.
Why, Burt? Would you want to be anything other than a worker bee?
His father asked, and his mother too asked him,
Burt, what's gotten into you? Don't you want to work and thrive and use your time to serve the hive?
Well, he could hardly say no. He wanted to please his mother and father, plus the life he was choosing would be infinitely harder than working in the hive. After all, bees, they don't have opposable thumbs, or any notable sense of rhythm, and I mean, we've been over the whole ear thing, you know. No, it wasn't looking great for him. He decided. His dream was much too much work. It simply would have been too hard. An insect playing jazz music? No, that was too far. Who'd even want to listen to it, he thought. Nobody wants to hear from me. I'm better off joining the rest of the hive, working as a busy worker bee. I'm going to put this dream to bed. No longer shall it play in my head. What is that? He thought, as he heard something rather beautiful. What could that noise be that is so decisively musical? I feel something stirring within me again, he said as the music pounds. He looked left and right, up and down, but couldn't see anyone around. Then he saw it. And imagine his surprise when he discovered the prospect that such a sound was being made by another insect. A cricket, to be specific. Why are you doing that? Burt asked. Don't you know insects can't play music? And the cricket raised his head to Burt and said,
Well, I find it therapeutic.
But where did you learn to do it? It's really wonderful, but where? And the cricket replied with a look in his eyes as if he was too shy to share.
Well, I just felt it, man. The rhythm, it felt good to me. I was surprised at first, but without thinking I was making some sweet melody, so I didn't really question it. Besides, I'm just practicing. I play in a band on weekends with the ladybirds and wasps and worms and a few of those guys' girlfriends, and hey.
And the cricket stopped and considered Burt. Saw this little bumblebee who was so terribly hurt by the words of his friends, his teachers and his family, who hung in the air so terribly unhappily, and he said,
Hey, I think you could do pretty well with us.
Why? Said Burt.
Well, because I like your butt.
And Burt realized. He'd been making music all along. Of course, he'd been making music all along. And it wasn't long before the other bees caught on. They would come see him and they would sing along, and all the crickets and the bees and the birds and the trees would all sing along. In fact, it wasn't long before the other bees realized that if they didn't want to, they didn't have to work in hives. They didn't have to be worker bees. Hey, well, they could be anything they wanted to be. Whether it was to scuba dive or mountain climb or derive the equation for everlasting life, they all realized in their lives they had been inspired by things they had seen and people they had admired, and these things were things that they could do too. And by doing so, they would inspire other people anew, whether it was the opening of the flower, the secrets of Jupiter, the movement of a dancer, or programming a supercomputer. It was a cycle of being shocked by something, then taking the time to investigate and trying to understand its working. That was the first step of a process towards being brilliant at something, and doing brilliant things, and being brilliant bees. They all realised they could do it. Everyone could be whatever they wanted to be, and be brilliant at it, if they only believed in themselves. And that was all thanks to Burt. Thank you, Burt. Thank you.